Hello, today I am going to discuss about functions. We have covered a lot in our syllabus of C. So till now, what we have seen or what we have come across is we have only used a single function, that is main function, inside which we have used sometimes quite a different functions as per our necessity. We have used printf, we have used scanf, sometimes we have used mathematical functions like sqrt, like pow. So these are all functions. Some predefined task may be performed with these functions. Now, coming across to the various functions that we have discussed, main, pow, sqrt, printf, scanf, all these can be broadly classified into two different types. These are the library functions and the user-defined functions. The library functions are those functions which are defined inside some predefined libraries in C. And for using those functions, we have to call them by using the preprocessor directive. Like for example, for using printf and scanf statements, we should use the predefined library, that is hash include stdio.h. This stdio.h is the standard input output header files that will contain the printf and scanf functions. Similarly, for using the sqrt and power functions, we need to call math.h. We have another functions like getch or clr clear screen. For those we need to use conio.h. So we can tell these functions which are called by using libraries. These are the library functions. Whereas the functions which we define on our own to perform any kind of task as per our necessity, that is an user defined functions. Like for example, main, it is an user defined functions, and we use main function so as to define the compiler that the program execution will begin from the main function. Now, what is the use of functions, or why do we need to use functions? What are the advantages? To come across, if we use a single function known as main, then if in our program we are doing many different tasks, then our program becomes lengthy and we may come across different errors while compilation. Now the use of programs or the use of a main function, single main function with a lot of programs, therefore becomes very much difficult. The task of debugging, testing, as well as maintenance, this becomes difficult when we use a single main function. Instead, if we divide the entire program into subprograms, and each of the subprogram is defined with a function, and these functions are called from the main, then the task can be performed very much easier way, very much efficient way. So The next one what we see is the we have already discussed about the predefined or the library functions that are available stdio.h, math.h, string.h for the functions that we use in our string handling. There we need to call this functions library function, that is string.h. And we have already discussed about this user defined functions, that we are using some user defined functions for performing some specific task as per our necessity. Now there is an example of the user defined function which we will be explaining it later on. Here you see that there is a cube function which brings about the input variable. So when this statement is executed, if answer equal to cube if input. So here cube if input, when this statement is executed, the program will jump from this particular statement to the function where the cube is defined. After the execution of the complete cube function, the result, what it is generated by the cube function, will be returned back to this particular statement. And the result of the cube function will be stored in if answer variable. And that will be used for further processing. I have already defined that printf and scanf, these are also standard user defined functions which are defined in include stdio.h. So we have all discussed a few of these characteristics of function, that it has got some unique name, it is specially designed to perform some specific task as per our necessity, like printing, sorting an array, or numerical order, or calculating a cube root, or anything like that. A function can perform its task without the interference form or interfering with the other parts from that form. That is, independently, the function can execute on its own and return the result back to the main function. Each of the functions is executed independently, and then the result is returned back to the main function. So whatever the error that occurs inside the subprogram or the function, that is there inside that particular function only, and it will not affect the working of the main program. Now, for using the function, it has to be called from the main function. So it may receive any values from the calling function, and these values are known as the parameters. And after executing the function, the result is to be returned back to the main function from where it is being called. Now, there are some mechanisms or the working of the function. It will not execute until it is being called. Even if the program or the function is there inside the program, it has to be called from the main function. Until that part, it will not be executed. When this calling is performed, the main program sends some of the information to the function in order to perform more arguments. And although this passing of the arguments is not a mandatory task, in the specific function, user defined function, some arguments may be defined locally for using in that particular function itself. When the function has finished the processing, the return value is being returned to the calling function. Here is an example of the function. See, suppose int main void. So here the if we look at the syntax of the function, here main, as we have discussed, it is an user defined function. Int main void. So int, it is the type, data type of the value that is to be returned from the main function. Main is the name of the function, and void, since there are no arguments that are passed into the function, therefore the in the argument section it is mentioned as void. Instead of void, if we mention it as blank also, it will work. Now inside the main function you can see function 1 int arg, function 2 char arg, char n float arg. So these are the different types of arguments, integer, character or floating point argument, that are being defined. Or a function may be defined here. A function 1 is called with passing of the integer type argument, whereas in the next statement you will see that the function 2 is called with the passing of a character and floating point argument. Here you see the function 3, it is called in another way. In another int equal to function ch another card. Here you see the function 3 is called with the argument char and ch another card, and whatever the value is returned from the function 3, that is being stored in this particular variable in another int. And function 2, here another function 2 is being there. So where char ch char arg1 n floating arg. So here you see a particular user defined function can be called as many times as we want from the main function. This is one of the advantages of functions. See here it is mentioned that a function can be called as many times as shown in function 2. We have called it at least 2 times. Now, whenever a function is called, it can be in any order that it has been declared as a prototype and defined. It can be called in any sequence. Okay. Next. Okay, that is all. We have discussed about the basics of functions. I hope it is clear to you, and we will be defining more in the future classes. Thank you.